Hello and welcome to Radio Somanaut. I'm your host, Whitney Dawn Pyles, and in each episode, I'll be interviewing inspiring and innovative individuals who are impacting the world through somatics, using the modality we call body-oriented coaching. Each one of my guests is a Somanaut. That means they're a graduate of the Somatic School, an online educator that trains coaches to be stewards of the body's wisdom. We'll be hearing their stories and getting particularly curious about how they're carrying this impactful work into their lives and communities. So in the spirit of the Somatic School, my invitation to you is to embrace ease, take a breath in, and allow their words to be a welcome exhale. Welcome to Radio Somanaut by the Somatic School. This is Whitney Dawn Pyles. I am very excited to be here today with Rachel Blackman and Nick Robertson. And we are very unique today with this little panel of ours. We're actually spread all over the globe. So we're across very different time zones. It is afternoon for me. It is evening for Rachel in the UK, and it is early in the morning for Nick in New Zealand. So we are global, as well as Nick is a Somanaut. She graduated from the Somatic School last year in 2024, and Rachel is actually one of our trainers. She's been training with the school since 2019, and so we just have some really unique voices in the space that I'm excited to hear from. Welcome, Nick and Rachel.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for being here. Full disclosure, we tried this once before and had some insane technical difficulties. So there's a lot of gratitude in the space for the technology working today. So I imagine anyone listening to this has experienced some level of that. So we'll just take a moment to celebrate and acknowledge this moment of arriving and hearing and seeing each other. So yes. All right. So I would love to do something, and this is not the typical flow of this podcast, but with you two, I'm just feeling really compelled today to start in the present moment and look towards the future. So as I've just said, Nick, you graduated last year. Rachel, you've been connected with the Somatic School for about 6 years. But just in this moment now, where you are at in your career, in your life, thinking about this work, whether it be body-oriented coaching or somatics in general, what is most alive for you as you look towards the future of where this might go generally or in your own life?
What a great question.
Thanks.
Do you want to take that, Nick?
Yeah, it is a great question, and one that I think about often as I'm dreaming up daily what my own practice, Unapologetically Robertson, looks like. And I guess for me, I've really focused on not having a one-size-fits-all approach. And what that means to me is that I have a toolkit that I call the Unapologetically Robertson Therapeutic Toolkit. And in that toolkit, I have many different things. And within that, obviously, a huge part of that for me is body-orientated coaching. But I think that everything that I do is based off the foundation of just awareness through meditation, through bodily sensations and that type of thing. And then I ladder on, EFT tapping, compassionate inquiry, and then body orientated coaching. But what I will say is that what I didn't realize was that the body orientated coaching would make all of my other practices and all of my other modalities so much more meaningful and deep, in the way that I truly see the processing at a body level of those emotional charges and that type of thing. And so for me, every modality that I'm now working with has an element, a core element of all of the skills that I've built from the Somatic School. And I'm absolutely loving having individuals sit in front of me and and be led by their aliveness, allowing their nervous system to set the tone for how we work, how fast we go, how slow we go, where we go, and being client led for me is everything. So really practicing for me moving forward, continuing no agenda. That the client is the expert in themselves, and that my presence is more important than anything else that I can do, and just continually showing compassion, curiosity, for the work, for my clients, for myself, is going to be something I want to remind myself of now and in the future. Just beginner's mind always.
Compassion and curiosity, the importance of presence and being client led, having no agenda. And yeah, it sounds like emergence. So continuing to hold this not one size fits all space. And yeah, that resonates so deeply with me because I experienced that as well as a coach and a facilitator and a practitioner. And it does feel like in the space of doing this podcast, as well as within my own network, within the Somatic School, it feels like we're gatherers, or we're foraging, and we're collecting, we're taking in information, we're taking in skills, we're taking in experience, we're noticing that reciprocal field, whether we're practicing with someone one-on-one or we are in that group conversation. But we're just, seems that we're gathering data and gathering skill, and I don't know, maybe gathering hope. But I just have this image of all of us kind of taking what works and leaving the rest. And I certainly hear that as you use the word toolkit. So body oriented coaching being one piece, albeit a foundational piece in that toolkit. And you mentioned awareness through meditation, you mentioned EFT, you mentioned compassionate inquiry. And so I'm just curious to hear a little bit more from you, Nick, on what are those other what are the other things in your toolkit? Will you tell me a little bit more about them?
Yeah. So I guess more about the modalities, the other modalities you mean, or how I put them all together, or yeah.
Any of that. So yeah, I'd love to know what they are, and how body oriented coaching or this framework has supported you to pull them together, and not just pull them together in a way that you're replicating over and over, but pull them together in a way where you're able to hold that nuance between clients.
Definitely. Yeah. I would say that all of the other individual modalities do work standalone. There's no doubt about it. But I was looking for tools, and I didn't go out looking for tools, so to speak, but I was doing things that would help myself. And so I started with meditation, and, obviously, so many great things come through that awareness and that silence and that time to sitting with yourself 2 times a day, 20 minutes per day. But what I also realized was that through sitting with yourself, you become very, very aware of the inner dialogue and the stories that you tell yourself. And for me, becoming aware of those stories was a lot. And I needed to somehow not get rid of them, but release some charge. And so I then decided I'll do some EFT tapping. So I took an EFT tapping class, and I was absolutely blown away by how you could get from, a rating of 10 down to a rating of 0 within a couple of rounds, and how that worked. And then I realized, started learning about core beliefs and all of the things, and then, as I said, as I started to recognize my stories, I realized I might have a little bit of trauma that I need to work through. And so I then went and studied with Gabor Mate, the compassion and inquiry approach, because I wanted to understand how we show up in the world, and how we become that, and what that means. And so with all of those different modalities, they all have a different use and a different purpose. But what they are tools that allowed me to be the expert in myself. I stopped having to give my power away to doctors and all of those other people. And if I was feeling stressed, I could inquire within myself. If I was feeling a certain emotion, I could sit with it. And so everything that I've done and all the modalities, they've come about through the fact that they served a different purpose for me while I was on my own journey of self-study and recovery in some aspects. But to make a practice, to make a business, I was missing the framework. I was missing the foundation that allowed me to understand contracting of clients, to understand the ethical side of managing a business in that particular way. And so I went to I came to the Somatic School thinking that I was coming for an ICF accreditation that would help me become a compassion and inquiry practitioner. When in actual fact, what it gave me was the foundation to my business and to my practice. And now everyone who I see, I know that I have a framework that I work upon, and that is the body orientated coaching framework. And then depending on what is present, what is appearing, what is alive, I then look into the toolkit and I try different modalities. And some weeks now, my clients say to me, Nick, not into compassion and inquiry this week. Let's do some tapping. Okay. And now they're starting to know what their tools are and how to use them themselves.
Yeah, great.
I don't want them to be reliant on me. I want them to be tools that they take away in their own handbag and off they go.
Or man bag.
Or man bag.
Or man bag, man purse.
Because my husband's got a man bag, so thank you for sharing that out, Rachel.
Good for him.
He would have been very disappointed had I have not included that. But yes.
Oh, that's so, I love that. I mean, the toolkit, the man bag, the handbag reminds me so much of this really, really lovely metaphor that came. And I'd actually love to hear from you on this, Rachel. So I was recently in the Accelerator, which is a skills revisit. I've continual training. It's for graduates of the Somatic School. And I was just in that space. And there was an acronym that I didn't learn when I was in the school back in 2021, I think, 2021, 2022. And it was PACT. And PACT as an acronym, as a way to just assess how you're arriving. Patient, attentive, curious, and kind. I believe I have gotten that correctly, but patient, attentive, curious, and kind. Have I arrived to this session packed? Have I arrived resourced? And through this conversation that we were having, I thought, wow, how fun would it be to do a workshop around this, or just do something with clients around what's in your pack, right? Imagining that we are packing up an actual backpack with what resources us, whether it's a tangible physical item, whether it's an idea, whether it's something that we're remembering about ourselves or the world or the work. But just what would it be like to, imaginary or in real life, pack a backpack full of what resources us to come into the world and do this work? You guys with me?
Yeah.
Completely.
Okay. I would love to know what's in your backpack. What's in your real or metaphorical backpack, Rachel? What really resources you to come into the training space, to come into coaching spaces? I know you have quite a lot of expressions of your work that I'd love to hear more about, but I am very curious about, what would be in your little resourcing backpack?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it varies, and it will be attuned to every single situation, obviously. So and every single moment I'm in my body, in my life. But there's some rituals I do before I come into being in contact with another person, another individual, and I do it with every single client. And I light a candle. Got one lit now. I do a little grounding for myself. I make sure that I'm connected to the planet underneath my feet. I make sure that my space is clear. I make sure I'm hydrated. And it is really important, actually, for me to have liquid so that I can kind of feel like I can keep my presence really tuned in. And most of all, I want to feel like I can be with and sense. I can sense in and I can sense out, and I can be with on lots of different layers of being. And that feels like the most important preparation I can do. And then the greatest gift is when a client feels like they can arrive just as themselves, however they are, however that is, that they can feel witnessed exactly how they are, and that however they are is welcome. And I feel like it's the biggest gift in my practice when a client reports feeling like that, or that there's a permission granted. And then when there's the felt shift, or when there's the discovery of something or the transformation, I really feel like I can be there with them. Like in that feels like a kind of joint celebration. It feels like we're there together. And that's as much a surprise for me as it is for them. I'm always trying to coach myself out of thinking I need to know. And what you said, I love what you said, Nick, about the beginner's mind. I love to kind of constantly put aside anything I think I know. Like, oh, that's interesting. There, I think I know the answer to that. Let's put that aside. It's just like a Tao. It's like a Tao. I keep having to do that. No matter how many years I've been doing it, I just still have to keep reminding myself, and let that go, Rachel. Just let that go and be with what is, be with what is. It's a real present moment practice, the work we do. And part of it's beauty and its constant newness, and challenge, right?
Rachel, I mean, I'm full on sparkle hunting here. If you don't know what that means, folks, if you're listening, it's getting disproportionately curious about what's lighting that person up. And so just noticing your body language and your leaning in and your beautiful smile, and also feeling like I want to affirm that whatever you're doing in that moment to resource yourself ahead of coming into the group space as a trainer, check, it's working. That's been such a continual blessing of, and Nick and I talked about this a little bit before we hit record about playing in the different spaces of the Somatic School, whether it's the body-oriented coaching accredited diploma and body-oriented coaching course itself, or it's coming into something like the Accelerator, which is a graduate program, or body-oriented group coaching, which is a graduate program, or even just attending an event that Nathan's hosting. You all did a global panel the other day, but just the wonderful thing about continuing to come back to the Somatic School spaces is yourself included in this, but the folks holding the space. I mean, and Nick, you spoke to this as well, but just the importance and the power of presence. What becomes possible? What can we open the door to? What can unfold for us when we're just really attending to that presence and that beginner's mind? I also loved that you mentioned that here, Nick. And so I think, Rachel, just wanting to affirm that you are such a representative of that, and really, yeah, really appreciating hearing it in your words, a little behind the scenes, which is also, Rachel's an actress, so a little behind the scenes to Rachel. And Rachel, I'd love to come back to you with the kind of first question that I brought into this space, just about from where you're standing at this moment in your practice, in your work, in your career. What's feeling really alive for you as you look towards the future?
Thanks for coming back to that question, because it felt so juicy when you asked it. So I think one of the things that is my dharma is getting super. I'm really interested in what brings people alive. That really lights me up. And so getting disproportionately curious about what brings people alive is a kind of natural thing for me. I kind of, that's my jam, right? And so that's lucky. So I've chosen the right work. But then I look out to the world, and this came up in response to your question. I look out to the world, and we're living in a really, really, there's quite a lot of difficulty going on in the world when I look out beyond my little sphere of, I live in a nice part of the world where there's not war, and, so I kind of look out into the world and I see that where there's some pretty heavy stuff going on, and it's a lot to hold for a little body. And what's coming into my client spaces sometimes, recently more so, is this sort of feeling that people feel a little responsible for holding it all themselves somehow, or that if a little bit like this, like if only I concentrated harder, we might not have gone to war. That kind of feeling, like that I might be single-handedly responsible for global warming, like something ridiculous. Like, no, one body can't hold all that. We're not designed, we're nervous systems that are relational. That's who we are. We're built to be relational so profoundly, not just with each other, but at the level of like our feet with the grass and our eyes with the sky, and like we're profoundly relational. And so there's something I'm really interested in, how we be like enough for us, like enough and right-sized and kind to what we can manage and kind to what we can't manage, and real about that, real honest with ourselves about that, especially as things escalate and get kind of even more crazy. Like, how might we be a place of resource for ourselves and our circle, and hopefully that ripples out beyond the circles that we even know. I mean, who knows whose work we touch beyond what we know. But there's a beautiful meditation at the affirmation that happens at the end of a Zen Buddhist practice that my colleague Brooke McNamara shared with me, and I love it, and I use it in all my group sessions, which is this affirmation like, may our work bless us, bless our circle, those we care about, and may it ripple out and touch beings that we can't even imagine, like more than human beings, may it ripple out. And that's what I hope for all our work, that it does that. And I think that we are doing that at the school. I think that is kind of at the heart of where our intention is. It sort of sits behind the school, but also I think it sits kind of explicitly in the way we're being patient, attentive, curious, and kind with ourselves. It's not just for our clients. We need to offer that to ourselves as well, or we're kind of peddling snake oil. We need to first of all offer it here. Anyway, that's kind of what's alive for me right now in my practice.
Thank you, Rachel. And just the image of the ripple is present for me, and I think in talking about the somatic school spaces or the engagement that's something that I'm personally fascinated by. I mean, it's honestly why we're here recording a podcast, and why I happen to be the person that's hosting it, because I'm so captivated by the potential of this work. And you're exactly right that that ripple, or that first drop, is turning that compassion and that empathy. I mean, as Nick said, compassion and curiosity, presence, turning that inward, and how we're being in relationship with ourselves. And then, who are we engaging with, both in our personal and professional lives, and what is the impact of just that presence, or the way that we're holding ourselves or listening to another person. And then, those people have their relationships. And so I do see that, and hope for that, and believe that that's such an important part of this. I mean, just over this weekend, I was facilitating at a festival, and I do a workshop that's based on an art installation from a couple years back, and it's called the Zone of Authenticity. And I bring many of the things I've learned through the school, and I bring them into that space, or adapt them for that space. And we did some sparkle hunting, as I've already brought up on this episode, and the reflections from people were just, I'm going to bring that into my own life. I mean, just really actively listening to a person, where I'm not anticipating what I'm going to say next, or thinking about myself and centering it in whatever they're saying or in their story, but just really challenging myself to be compassionate, to be curious, to be present as I'm just listening to another human being. I mean, it was a profound experience. That's what was reflected back to me as a result of this. And so, I mean, I think each of us has touched on this in our own way, but just, presence, listening, just human to human, noticing aliveness, and the profundity and the simplicity of just that. And it reminds me of, we had a preliminary call, which feels like a long time. And maybe it was like 2 months ago now. I don't know when it was, but I remember, Nick, you saying how impacted you were to come into a space, come into this virtual space, and really feeling like you were being received just as you were. So you were attending at an ungodly hour, joining a UK training from New Zealand, and just feeling like, I can come as I am. I can arrive exactly how I'm doing that day, with whatever I'm carrying. And I remember myself feeling really impacted by you speaking to that. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about that from you. What was that like? And why did that feel so different, or feel so impactful to you, to come into a space and really be received in that way?
Yeah, I think that's probably still to this day something that amazes me and surprises me. And I had a client who joined our global panel, and she sent me a message and said, "I now know what you mean, Nick. I've got tears in my eyes, because I felt like I truly, I truly belonged." And I smiled, and my heart was so full, because I often say, it's really hard to find your type of cappuccino, in life. And I think that all of the training that I did, whether it be online or in person, it was all wonderful, and there were so many amazing connections that I made. But the big difference for me was, yes, I was training in the middle of the night. I was starting at 10:30 and I was going until 6:30 in the morning. And
what a ninja. Sorry, but what a ninja. That's just, it still blows me away every time you say those figures out loud.
like, when I say it, I'm like, you must be joking. You're not actually being serious. But it's true. Like, it is actually true.
I was there.
Yeah, you were the trainer, and thank goodness now though that for all of the future me's in New Zealand and Australia and Asia Pacific, you don't have to do it, and your
No.
crow's feet will thank you for it. My skincare, my regime, my grey hair, everything. But I think the thing that was really interesting was I'd never been in an environment, in a training environment before where, you know, you would every session we were asked, you know, what am I feeling? You know, what am I sensing? And when that happened the first few times, I was like, what the heck? I don't even know what I'm feeling or what I'm sensing. I didn't even have the words, but yet we took the time to go around our cohort to ask that, and we heard from everyone. I was like, what is this? And, you know, and then I would see people, and they'd be moving in their space. I'd be thinking, why aren't they just focused on the camera? Where are they going? What are they doing? And it was when I started to realize that with that space, with the school, the job was enjoyment. And that meant that we got to turn up truly however we were. And so there were stages during the night where I didn't know whether I was Arthur or Martha, but I could call a spade, and my cohort, they just loved me regardless. You know, they would look in and I could see it, and what I started to realize was you can move your body while you're on a training course. Who knew? You can go to the bathroom while you're on it. You don't have to hold up 6 hours. Who knew?
Yeah, you can maybe recline on the sofa and turn your screen to follow you. Or, you know, like there's something you touched on. Sorry to interrupt you there for a sec, Nick. I just want to pick something up that you shared. Is that okay, Whitney?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just said something about the job is enjoyment, and I just want to kind of frame that a bit for the listeners or the watchers. There's something about, it's not, when we say the job is enjoyment, that's not forced fun. It's not that you're expected to have fun, which I think in other contexts it might translate as. In this context, when we say the job is enjoyment, the invitation is to follow what your body needs in every moment. So, and be there. So you turn up how you are, and that might look like you might be feeling extremely tired one day. You might be on your period. You might be stressed out because of a whole bunch of other stuff happening in your life, and you come and you're with that. And the invitation is for you to do whatever you need to do in order to be there in a way that feels okay for you. And that I'd never been in a training space. I'd never been in a training space that was like that before.
I've never been in a world that's like that before.
There it is.
And there it is. That's it, right? Because that's why what we're doing is countercultural, radical, and much needed. The culture is thirsty for that. Everyone wants permission to be themselves, right?
And that was the first time that I truly can say I showed up as myself, unmasked, with all the goodness, all the messiness, all the anxiety, all of the franticness, all the ADHD. I showed up as myself, and guess what? They didn't leave.
Not only that, they loved you.
Who knew?
Yeah.
So that's why I probably stayed up during the night, because I was willing to do whatever it took to feel that feeling and feel like I'd returned to myself for the first time ever, and I belonged somewhere.
Yeah, you could, you know, as you were both speaking, it was just this, you know, some days you just show up human. Some days you just a human.
Yeah.
With different needs and different energy levels and different circumstances. And I 100% relate to that. I did not anticipate getting pregnant while I was in the course, but I was pregnant for most of my my journey through the course. And I was joining at 4:30 in the morning, not as wild as you, Nick, but I was joining at 4:30
Nice.
in the morning from the East Coast of the US. And so that, I mean, not just the verbalized permission, but there's something that was really congruent about, this is a movement friendly space, come as you are. But there's, I mean, I think that's really backed up energetically and just backed up by the way the space is held. And so, Rachel, behind the scenes, I'd love, and I'm trying to even conceptualize how to ask this question, but I'm just going to, what I'm curious about. So from where you've sat as a trainer, and what Nick and I have named, and what we've all named here, is that this feels unique and rare.
Yeah.
To have a space where we can really show up in this way as we are, and be received, be loved, be held, and just really feel that full authentic permission to be as we are in a space that's, we've named that is unique. And so, because that's so rare and because that's so unique, it does feel like a process or something that you have to soften into as a participant, to really believe that, and allow yourself that. And so I'm wondering for you, Rachel, as a trainer, if there's anything that you've noticed about that, if there's a softening, or that an evolution even, or a releasing that you notice in people as they're going through the course and coming back time and again and being received in this way, what kind of shifts do you see in participants as a result?
Oh, that's a lovely question. Well, one thing that I notice is the softening. Softening's a lovely phrase, lovely word. I think that's true, and I'd also say something like a broadening that happens, and with that little ritual that we have every morning in the training of, like, or evening, whatever time you're zooming in from, of right now I'm feeling, right now I'm sensing, that level of attunement gets more refined as we move along, and people give themselves more permission to truly experience in the moment what they're truly feeling and what they're truly sensing. And that, like, ritualized reminder is sort of evidence of deepening throughout the process. And then also I notice more people give themselves more permission, like they'll go and get a meal and eat it by the end of the training, whereas at the start they won't dare, or they kind of let their child or their dog into the screen. Like it's kind of more normal. Life is more normal. Life happens inside this space where we happen to be doing a training. And obviously, you need to have a door closed sometimes for some of the, there's a sort of line there around looking after privacy public, maybe. But yeah, if someone comes across behind your I remember one time we were in a training and someone's stepfather was in the background doing some gardening out the back of their window, and they were very embarrassed, and then it became just okay, like in the group it sort of became okay that he didn't know that he was being seen, but he was like out there in his shorts doing the weeding. And it became part of life happening in the room,
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. And I mean, I certainly noticed that in myself with that check-in, or noticed within my cohort, kind of the more time that passes, the more you do hear things like, I'm sensing a heaviness, or I'm feeling overwhelmed. But just, I think what I've noticed is that there's a range that emerges because people are being really clear and transparent about that moment that they're in, or that season that they're in. And I think there's such a richness there. So thank you.
Yum.
Yeah, yum. So I'd love to know, we kind of started present, looking toward the future, and, we've named how few and far between, or if there are, I'm sure there's other spaces, but how few and far between spaces to really arrive as you are, how rare that is. And so it makes me curious about Yeah. What was your world like, or where were you at, either one of you, before finding the somatic school?
I was already training at another school that we're teaching people, facilitators and coaches, to work with embodied intelligence. And I've been a somatic educator for up to about 20 years, and been a somatic coach for many years before I came to the school, before I met Nathan. So what changed for me when I met the school, and obviously I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, so I sort of have the somatics. I kind of came to coaching via somatics. My work started with somatics and then emerged into coaching rather than the other way around. And what shifted with the somatic school that I think is very unique about this place is that the tools emerge from body psychotherapy, whereas the other embodiment trainings I had done, all of the stuff that I was doing came out of my acting training and the embodiment work I did training as an actor and working as an actor and improviser. So that's sort of where my kind of lineage, I guess, into this work. And then I was also working with a guy whose main influences were martial arts and meditation. Not to say that there aren't little strands in the somatic school. There are lineages that do come via Strozzi Heckler, and he has a background in martial arts and so forth. I mean, there are networks, if you follow them, in the lineages that do touch on those places. But the body-oriented coaching framework, toolkit, really do stem predominantly from the lineages of body psychotherapy, Hakomi and focusing, and obviously Taoism's really influenced Nathan as well. So that would be the main difference, I'd say. And the thing of full permission to be how you are, really, in the space. That feels like a radical act as well, and a coming home.
A coming home that comes in this podcast. And now I am curious, Rachel. So you've said you came to coaching via somatics, and so will you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I was training coaches to work with embodied intelligence, and then students started coming to me about 11 years ago and said, well, could you train me? Could you give me some coaching, please? And I went, well, I'm not really a coach. And they said, no, but I really want to have some coaching. And I went, oh, all right. And I sort of started doing some coaching because I was training them to coach, right? So I sort of had these tools, but I wasn't using them in one-to-one practice with clients. So I started doing that anyway, and kind of realized that a lot of the stuff I was doing with groups was actually group coaching. It followed the same kind of format and principle and structure and agreements, you know. So that's I sort of came in the back door that way. And then the other thing that I discovered through the Feldenkrais training was that Feldenkrais is actually a coaching relationship. So someone, like we call them students, a student will come, or a client will come with a question, and then we're working with touch and physical exploration inside the anatomy of the question itself. So we're working with the two nervous systems having a conversation. We're working with neuroplasticity. We're exploring where is ease in the system, where does the system want to go, where there's a yes, where there's a no, where there's a maybe. Like it's very very permission seeking the whole time, always inside the client's agency, seeing what wants to be born, what wants to emerge. And then we get to the end of the session and there's a bookending conversation, like, and where are you now in relationship to your question, your inquiry you brought, which is a coaching framework. And that came late, that discovery that it's actually a kind of coaching. So I kind of realized late to the party that I had been doing coaching for a lot longer than I thought I had. And then I came to the Somatic School, and of course I've got a coaching accreditation now, and I've sort of also like formally a coach. And there's something about coming in the back way or something, like I kind of came in a different direction to the way most people do, which I think affords me a certain a certain perspective, I guess, on coaching itself as a language and a form that I like. I sort of appreciate having some other perspectives that kind of come from somatics or come from the body. Yeah, I don't even know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And now I'm curious about very broadly, why coaching? What do you like about coaching?
Oh, I love coaching. I bloody love it.
Love.
I love it. I love because I think creativity and nurturing the generative principle is my jam. So
I see that.
Coaching is such a beautiful way of nourishing a client or a group to kind of orient towards their longing and what they want to be true and what they want to co-create. And the world needs more people who are wanting to work with that generative principle and create more of what is longing to have happen in the world, right? And that really excites me. I kind of want to be in that. It doesn't mean that we're not also working with shadow or depth at all. It's not in spite of depth or in spite of shadow. It's with shadow, with depth. It's both ending all of that and looking towards what wants to be created. And that, to me, feels like one of the rare gifts of being human that makes me excited to be alive as a person on the planet. So that's why coaching.
That's all.
Why for you? I'd love to hear your responses, you two. I feel like I've been talking too much.
No, not at all. That was thank you for sharing all of that, and just the both anding and the folding it in, which is a Schitt's Creek reference for anyone. But folding it in is a phrase that's been really alive for me, and so I love what you're sharing. Like just the generative quality of this work, as well as the both anding and the folding it in.
Can you please share the language? Can you share the Schitt's Creek reference?
Yes, I can. I find myself sharing this too often. So anyways, the premise of the show is that these ultra wealthy people are no longer ultra wealthy, and they are living in this town, and they're trying to engage with the locals. And so the mother and the son, who are hilarious, and they're trying to make, I think, enchiladas to bring over to the mayor's house. And the recipe says to fold in the cheese, and they've not made meals for themselves. And so they just keep saying to each other, just fold it in, David. And then they have no idea what it means. And so I can't say fold it in without thinking of these characters. And I do feel like that is a genius part of this way of working and of body-oriented coaching is just, and the training space and everything that we've been talking about, but just, let's integrate that. Let's bring that in. Let's let that be here. Let's see if we can hold all of this here in our co-created space or in our conversation or in our training space or whatever it is. So that's folded in. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So, Nick, I'd love to come to you, and kind of where we began is, where were you? What were you doing when you found the Somatic School, or what was your world like? And so I'm curious about that. And then, or alternatively, or in addition to just this question of why do you love coaching? Both of those directions feel really compelling. If you'd like to take them.
I think I really, really love coaching because the work that I'd been doing for previous to the body orientated coaching was all looking backwards and going deep into the past. And I love with coaching that everything's sort of future focused, and we're turning towards what's possible and what's alive and how we how we move forward and how we show up. And so for me, it helped me to have a backwards way of understanding things when I'm working with clients, but also then having a really fun, engaging way of and of bringing things to life, in the space. So that's probably why I love it. I think I also have just realized that I'm really drawn to the psychotherapy side of things, and I didn't probably put two and two together until what Rachel had mentioned. But with compassionate inquiry, with IFS, with all of those types of things that sort of float my boat, it is all of that, but without having the understanding of how to really feel into the felt sense, and when we're talking to the intellect versus when we're actually talking to, and having a conversation with the body. I wouldn't have been able to go deeper with that work if I hadn't have understood the tools of the body orientated coaching. So all of it together, I just love. Where I came from, I think, even in my executive roles, my favorite part of it was the team, was the developing the team members and watching them grow and evolve and become their best selves. So it doesn't probably surprise a lot of people that I've ended up in a coaching type of environment, especially for women, because if I think about, that sparkle or what that amazingness was in my old world, that was it. It was the people. It was the quality time, learning, training, and developing. And what a shame now that I think I would have loved to bring the me now back then, because if I had have been okay showing up as myself, it would have been easier for everyone else to also show up as their authentic self. So hopefully now what I can do is little by little, create tools and create environments where people can show up as themselves, like what I experienced at the Somatic School, providing people whatever they need for however it is that they want to show up, and letting them, us co-create that.
Yeah. People, I mean, just hearing the through line for you, just relationships, and like there's a potentiality there, holding a space or holding a person in a way where they might move towards their potential for whatever it is, success or authenticity or presence or whatever it is for them, and really appreciating that. And just also appreciating that this aliveness that's just come through this conversation so nicely. And Nick, I will say, excellent folding it in on answering those two questions in one response.
I do like enchiladas. What was that? What were we making?
Enchiladas.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm now not going to be able to stop thinking about that whenever anyone says fold it in.
There you go. You're welcome. Maybe we'll have to share the clip of that along with this podcast. But I'd love to just a couple, quick questions. The first, is there anything, right? A motto, a mantra, a phrase, an idea, a question Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
For me, it is, you are the expert in you. You truly are. And if you can, just take the time to sit with yourself and allow the noise outside to stop so that you can hear those internal whispers, because they're there, and they'll tell you, and they'll show you. And, you know, gut feeling and all of that, it's a thing. So you are the expert in you. Trust that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nick. Rachel, is there
Mm.
anything?
Yeah, so two little things popped up then in response. The first one is, I think I said it the other day to you, Nick, in another conversation. Okay, so you've tried hard. Why not try soft?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this other little Naira Wahid poem, which I just love, that goes, "Be softer with you. You are a breathing thing, a memory to someone, a home to a life." And I read that and I feel myself tenderize and just become a little softer and a bit more human shaped, you know? And I really wish that for everyone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you both. And then final question here. What are you leaving here with?
Well, I feel very nourished. I turned up a little frazzled and hot and bothered for various reasons. I've got a lot on at the moment. And I noticed that just through being here with you both, I've come into presence. I'm connected to the ground. I'm feeling gratitude in my heart. And I could really easily spend another few hours just hanging out with you both. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's really interesting to feel the change that I feel within myself at the moment. I was under-resourced and felt like a bit of a flat pancake. And just being in amazing company, feeling safe, feeling welcome, feeling inspired. I'm now it's just a reminder every time of is this my life? Like, is this work? Like, because pinch me. Like, how lucky am I to spend time with amazing people talking about amazing things, and now I get to leave here a lot better than when I came in, and excited about all the amazingness that's going to happen with clients today. And so thank you for the reminder. Thank you. I've loved every minute.
Thank you both so much. Yeah. This word broadened that Rachel brought. That's really with me, broadened. Yeah, it just feels like there's a bit more space in me for magic than there was. And so, listener, an invitation for you as well to take a moment and consider what you're leaving this conversation with, whether you've listened or watched. Just an invitation to register that, to savor that before we close things up. But I just want to say, Rachel Blackman, Nick Robertson, thank you so much for being here. And listener, if you are curious about the Somatic School, you can head to our website, thesomaticschool.com. On that website, you can register for a free taster session. If you are specifically curious about the Australasian intake, Nick is actually our regional lead on that. So you could email her at Nick, that's N-I-C, at thesomaticschool.com. So if you need to engage your curiosity a little bit, that's a couple ways to do so. But for now, again, thank you both for being here. This is Whitney Dawn Pyles. This has been Radio Somanaut by the Somatic School, and we're out. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks, Whitney.
That's our show, folks. I hope you found something nourishing, enjoyable, or inspiring in today's episode. Thank you for being here, and see you next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at Radio Somanaut. You can also find out more about the Somatic School and our accredited diploma in body-oriented coaching at thesomaticschool.com, or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. This is Whitney Dawn Pyles, encouraging you to stay present, stay curious, and stay connected.